weekend. That means Heritage Fair. It means hairspray bands. It means I go to Dundalk and probably eat fried dough as well as sausage with peppers and onions. And the Orioles very rarely are in during the weekend of the Heritage Fair. So I am celebrating by bringing in the handful of Oriole friends I have around the country who work in the media, relatively unabashed about, how much pride they take in loving the Orioles and hating on the Red Sox and the Yankees. So, we haven't been able to rub it in much. So, who knows how this thing's going to turn out in October. But he's down there somewhere between Charlotte, North Carolina, and love Justin because he has 2 beers, a glove, and a ball on the front of his Twitter, and you can follow him. What's going on, fellow first? I'm wearing my Wild Bill Hagee 34 jersey and my white paneled Rick Dempsey, Justin. So, I'm going into this West Coast thing with plenty of caffeination for late night baseball, and I don't think they're that good, but they're good enough to be where they are right now. So I'll celebrate.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm wearing a Jim Palmer jersey right now, so we've each got our Orioles paraphernalia going. Yeah, the thing about this team that I think is surprised me is that we knew they were going to hit homers, and then they've certainly been doing that, tying records and that sort of thing. But if you look at their numbers in June, they've actually had the best on-base percentage in all of baseball for the month of June, and that's something we haven't seen with the Orioles, in the Buck Showalter era. They've been a team that, bashes the ball, but really doesn't get on base at a great rate. So that's been a very encouraging sign, I think. And, maybe the rate they're doing right now, I don't think it's sustainable, but I don't think it's unrealistic to think that they'll continue to be one of the best run-scoring teams in baseball. So the same question we've had all along with them is, what about that starting pitching? And so far, they've been able to manage with less than great starting pitching, but the question is how long can they sustain that? Because basically right now they're just out hitting everybody and then hoping to get 5 innings from the starter and then turning it over to the bullpen. And it's worked very well so far, but is that sustainable for the second half of the season? I guess we'll see.
As you well know, Gallardo and Jimenez were brought in and given a lot of money to do this job, to do the job better than they've done it, but all they would need to do is be what they've been this week, which is, make a couple of starts in San Diego, get to the 5th or 6th inning, wait around for the bats to come, and if the Orioles can manage to score 6 or 7 or 8 runs on those nights, they'll win. If they score 2 or 3, they'll lose. Same with Gausman. They scored 2 or 3 plenty of nights, and, Gausman took 2 months trying to get his first victory. But all that being said, those were the guys that were the offseason acquisitions that were the arms that were bought instead of grown, to use Andy McPhail's expression. And, to see them healthy, throwing the ball in San Diego. Now, again, that's one of the really bad teams, and, they kick the ball around. They're no good. We've seen them now twice in the last week and a half. But those guys being able to make a start every 5th day and make it some sort of a credible start that isn't 2 1/3, 7 hits, 5 runs, 62 pitches, and we've got to go get T.J. McFarland or Vance Worley or Oliver Drake, for God's sake. As long as that can happen, I'm pretty sold on the fact that Gausman and Tillman can take the ball. I don't know about Wilson and certainly not about Wright. I do know that any thoughts that they're going to get real pitching help in the trade market in 4 weeks isn't reality. The reality is the Red Sox and the Blue Jays are going to get that. And those teams are going to get better at some point in the next 4 weeks. I don't know that the Orioles are going to get better unless it's Gallardo and Jimenez who are their trade deadline acquisitions to bring up the bottom of the rotation. The way they wanted Feldman to do it, the way they want, they've gone out and made these kind of moves. The Bud Norris thing, these guys need to at least pitch to a 4.5 ERA and give them 5 innings.
Right. Well, exactly. This thing is they don't need to have great starting pitching because they score runs and they have a very good back end of the bullpen. So, like you said, you get guys who can just consistently get you 5 decent innings. Don't even have to necessarily be great innings. You're going to put yourself in a position to win a lot. I have a lot more confidence that Gallardo can be that guy than Ubaldo, to be honest with you. I just think Ubaldo has shown at this point that he's just not capable of doing that on a regular basis.
But if he can be
so
good 3 out of 4 times, they only stink once every couple weeks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because he's going to stink. I would agree with you. But he's also capable on a hot night of going out there and going 8
Right.
innings and throwing a 2-hit shutout, I mean.
Well, they're certainly better off if they can have him pitching against the Padres, and the Rays of the world, as opposed to the Blue Jays and Red Sox. Whereas he really has the teams that have a good offenses, he's just getting killed, and that's understandable. But when you're not good, the teams that really can hit are gonna make you pay for it. So if they could manage that, but obviously in the AL East they're not going to have that option. They're going to be playing the Red Sox a lot more, and they're going to be playing the Blue Jays a lot more. So yeah, I think you're right. They're not going to be able to make any big splashes at the deadline. I wouldn't be surprised though to see them go after maybe a reliever or do something similar to what they did 2 years ago with Andrew Miller, and just stock that bullpen even more with the idea, hey, if we can get 4 innings out of a guy, then we can get to the bullpen early.
Because, bring Andrew Miller in the 5th, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, that might be the formula they try to do, because they've got themselves in a position now where they don't have to have a great second half to be a contender. If they're a 500 team in the second half, they're going to be in that 90 win range, and that's certainly probably going to be good enough to at least be in the conversation for the wild card. And it may be even for the East, because I don't think any of these teams have really looked great so far. So it's the same old thing with them every year. The last few years, anyways, they get to this point where they're in a pretty good shape, but they have some real holes they need to fill, and they don't have the pieces to trade to fill those holes. So they try to go with some lesser pieces, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So I'll be really interested to see what they do or attempt to do at the deadline. I think that's going to be fascinating, because there's just not great starting pitching available. I mean, for them or anybody else. There's if you look at the free agent market, where you normally will get those kind of pitchers, the guys who are going to be free agents, there's nobody.
Or even the Cole Hamels types. I mean, the James Shields,
exactly,
the sort of damaged goods that you have to contribute $40 million to get.
Right.
I don't want someone else's Ubaldo Jimenez or Gallardo at this point, right?
Absolutely.
Justin
McGuire,
McGuire,
you don't need that.
Joining us here, MLB editor for Sporting News. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No.
I'm taking notes here, and I'm writing stuff down. And one thing that did occur to me this week is that they're not going to see Felix Hernandez. They're not going to see Kershaw. And when the schedule comes out, I mean, you're playing 3 games at Dodger Stadium, 4 games in Seattle. I mean, come on. You had an 80% chance of seeing Hernandez, right? You had a 60% chance, 70% chance of seeing Kershaw at home for what it's worth. And, on this churn through, that's a real benefit too, because as you pointed out, Jimenez and Gallardo do pop up, and you'd rather have them pop up against the Padres or against, the Braves if they were on your schedule. But, the other side of that is when you're not seeing the other team's number ones, or when you're seeing David Price and somehow handle him, that's good poker too. I'll take that. I mean, when we're not seeing those best pitchers, that certainly levels the playing field.
Absolutely. I mean, and dodging Kershaw is a real good thing for them, because as you know, he's in a different world.
Yeah, he's automatic, man. I mean, it's playing the Warriors. You're gonna lose.
Yeah, and they're like, if you look at the Dodgers' record when he pitches as opposed to when he doesn't pitch, it's night and day. I mean, I think they may be even below 500. Yeah, in fact, I'm sure they're below 500 when he doesn't pitch. So they're just a different team without him. So yeah, you got to let. I mean, I think this West Coast swing. I mean, if they can come through here with 500 or a game above 500, I think that's going to be good. They don't have to. They've got themselves in a position now where they don't have to be great for these road swings. They just have to be good, or adequate, and then get back home where they have a great record. And I think that's the key. Just don't let yourself get into one of these extended, 7-game losing streaks like they did last year. And that's the thing they've really avoided this year. And so if they can do that, again, they're going to be in a good position, even if they don't play great in the second half. They've got themselves in a position where, if a few things go right in the second half, they're going to be right in it.
Justin McGuire joining us here, and it is all things baseball right now. He is the MLB editor at Sporting News. You can also follow his journey out on Twitter at Jay McGuire. That's McGuiresn. That's for Sporting News. Jay McGuire SN out on Twitter. He has 2 lovely beers and a ball and a glove. It will make you want to go play catch, probably. I found my glove, by the way. I went through storage, doing this WNST Rock Week and going through all these tapes. I went through my storage, and I found my glove, and I'm like, no wonder I couldn't play catch. I mean, I didn't have my glove. It was in the storage thing. So, trading deadline is fascinating, especially for old farts like you and I that sort of remember the Keith Morelands and the Lonnie Skate Smith and the Kevin Basses and Lord knows what other Craig Lefferts. I could go through all of those kinds of acquisitions. And, I know you guys at Sporting News will chronicle this as the Baseball Bible when we get closer to the trading deadline, especially this year where, as you've pointed out, I don't see anything blockbustery going on unless you're trading yours for mine. Now, would it shock me to see the Orioles deal scope for some other young rising star? I don't know. I mean, could that kind of thing happen? Maybe. I find that doubtful that teams would trade ises for other ises at this point. I think they're looking more to say, here's a hole we have. How do we improve that? Not something we have that's good and try to make it better. I go back to the days where money, was a big factor in this, in getting rid of contracts. Kansas City, Florida, San Diego, when they were flat broke, had sell-offs at various points to teams with more money. This isn't a money issue anymore, right? I mean, it really is the poor teams and the rich teams, whether it's the Red Sox or the Dodgers or the Yankees, they do not want to give up any young talent at all because of the incredible price break that comes when you play with young players. And that makes this even harder, but harder than that is there really is no bait out there. I mean, I don't think there's a player out there that's going to be dealt that we're going to be like, oh, wow, that's a game changer, in the way in the mid-'90s where David Wells is getting dealt one day and then Jimmy Key's getting dealt the next day, and you've got to go buy Bobby Bonilla. And, it's July 1st, so I still have to point out that Bobby Bonilla got a $1.2 million check this weekend. Happy 4th of July to him for the Mets. So, it's those kinds of bad deals that happen under fire, and it's really a weird era in baseball because there's not much to compare it to, because this wild card system has made even bad teams like the Yankees think twice about becoming a seller in this market.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at the Yankees last night. They were losing to the Rangers, going to have just another loss. And now suddenly they have a big comeback win. And maybe they're thinking, maybe we are going to be a contender. Maybe we can compete for those wild card slots. And you're right. It's like they're in the old system, a team with their record at this point in the year, it's over. They don't really have a chance.
And because there were so many sellers, right? I mean, there were 15 teams looking to get rid of a guy or two, and there were 8 teams that could afford it, right? So, I mean, it kind of made for better poker, I think. I mean, I don't think this is as interesting. I think it makes the games more interesting, right? Because I'm assuming the Orioles are going to have to play on with what they have.
Right. Yeah, it's true. It's just I mean, you still can get those kind of things occasionally. I think last year, you had Hamels and Price, Tulowitzki all dealt around the trade deadline. So it's still possible in this era, but this year certainly doesn't look like it's going to be that year. It's probably, I think it's likely to be kind of a dull trade deadline because again, there's just doesn't seem to be anybody out there who might be traded. The biggest names that might be traded are those Yankees guys. Chapman and Miller have come up a lot of times. But again, if they stay right around 500, are they going to really do that? Thinking, well, if we play well in the second half, we can compete for one of those wild card spots. So I think it'll be really they're going to be kind of one of the more interesting teams to watch just to see what happens. And, the Brewers are the other ones where they're potentially trading Braun or Jonathan LaCroix, who are obviously two, pretty big names and fairly big impact players. Other than that, though, I don't see a lot of names out there that excite me too much.
Justin McGuire covers all things baseball as the editor at Sporting News. Now, I got to bring this up because, I see this out on the website. It's a great argument, right, especially in the middle of the season. Sporting News has listed their top 50 baseball players and a ranking system. And as we get up on this weekend, of course, Justin, the end of the vote whatever, vote orange, vote Nats, vote whomever. We'll get the All-Star teams together next week in a lovely environment out in San Diego. And these All-Star games here in this era, I find them to be fascinating because I always look through my old pictures from back in the 90s when I went to All-Star games every year and the kinds of players that were there, whether it was the Ripkins and the Clemens and the Jeters and those guys. This modern era is really about guys like Trout and Harper and Machado on the come, right? Many, many under 30, many under 25 at this point. Well, this isn't a graybeard group of all-stars, and this is a pretty glorious era for young talent, and I guess it makes your rankings even more significant, right?
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you look at our rankings, which were based on, we had 27 experts vote on it, including some of our own staff people, but also, some broadcasters and beat writers, a couple of former players who work for MLB Network, that kind of thing. But the long story short, three of our top four were guys who are under 25. Mike Trout, Bryce Harper, and Manny Machado. And then you go down the list, you got Nolan Arenado, and you got Carlos Correa, and you've got just a bunch of under 25 players, Chris Bryant, all on the top, 25 or so. And I agree. I can't really remember a time, I've been a baseball fan for 40 years. I can't remember a time when there were this many great young players, and I mean really young.
Yeah, I mean, I remember all the phenoms, right? I mean, Yount and
right.
Rice and Lynn coming along, and then there was, Ripken and Ricky Henderson, and, but it's sort of staggered in to the Pete Roses and the Steve Carltons and the Jim Palmers, and, those guys were still hanging around. The soft underbelly of this is when Jeter and Rivera, kind of left. Ortiz is kind of hanging around, but there's not much, really, of that ilk or that era, and I guess maybe there was a soft post-steroid period from a birthday standpoint where there were a few years there where God didn't make Hall of Famers, with or without the juice or the clear or the cream, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. Yeah, again, looking at our list, the only guy on the list who was was around in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, is David Ortiz. He's really the only guy who had been a star for a long time, who goes back a while.
Well, usually you can go back 10 years to an All-Star game and find 5 to 8 faces that are headed to the Hall of Fame. Some Ozzie Smith hanging around. You can do that in most years, and it wasn't just because of I'm going to vote for Cal Ripken because I always vote for Cal Ripken. But I think if you go back to 10 years ago's All-Star game, if you go back to 5 years ago's All-Star game, you'd be hard-pressed to find a lot of faces that are going to be in this year's All-Star game.
Absolutely true. I mean, I think, Ortiz probably the only one. I don't know if he was in the All-Star game 5 years ago, but he might have been. But yeah, that's right. We went back. I actually looked at our list, our top 50 list from 2011, and there were a handful of players who were on it both times, but most of them were guys who were young in 2011. Clayton Kershaw was on it. And I think Buster Posey and a couple of guys like that, McCutchen, who were really young in 2011, and are sort of in their, getting in their late 20s now. But yeah, there weren't the guys who were on the top of the list. For the most part, were guys who were either no longer relevant, like Albert Pujols, or Alex Rodriguez, or just out of the game entirely, like Mariano Rivera and a few others.
It's fascinating, Justin, you would say that about Pujols, because if you were to take the top 50 paid players in Major League Baseball, you would have an all-star team, right? I mean, it would have Pujols. There would be Josh Hamilton. There would be Verlander. There would be CC Sabathia, Teixeira. All those guys have all-star patches and stuff in their closet, and they've all got $150 million, and they're all making a lot of money now, but they didn't hold up the way Palmer did at the end, or Rose, or, I know Carlton, some of those guys, but I'm talking about the glory era of baseball. A lot of those guys, when Ozzie Smith was going to the Hall of Fame, or to the All-Star game, or Cal Ripken at the end, they didn't stink the way some of these guys have become incredibly pedestrian while making a whole lot of money and quite frankly, weighing their teams down. You're right?
Right.
Look up in Philadelphia and all the former All-Stars they've had up there.
Well, Ryan Howard alone, he's another guy who was on that 2011 list who, wouldn't make the top,
right.
top 500 players in baseball right now, Yeah, it is kind of weird. I mean, Pujols is a little surprising me. I think 5 years ago, I think most people would have thought he would still be a star in 5 years. And he's still hitting homers and still has power, but he's not doing a lot besides that. And that's been a bit of a surprise. I thought he would age better than he has.
Well, hey, dude, isn't that the concern for Chris Davis for the Orioles, right? That the old man got a hair up his ass last winter, kind of went nuts and fell in love and did a bachelor, bromance with Chris Davis and, gave him $30 million of deferred money. I mean, he is going to be the Bobby Bonilla when we're all waving at Mr. Angelos' tombstone 20 years from now. Chris Davis will still be getting $1.4 million, in 2032 or whatever, right? So, but that's the game you play. Chris Davis in 2019 and 20 and 21, he's going to be our Pujols probably, right? I mean, it really comes down to it.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this several times. I didn't like that deal at all, although I like Chris Davis, and I'm glad he's an Oriole in 2016. Yeah, it's not a deal that's going to make sense long term, most likely. I think by the end of it, it's unlikely that he's much of an impact player at all. But it's the deal they made.
Speaking of that, maybe we go into a Mariners conversation because the Orioles are out there. I know you'll be staying up late. Justin McGuire's on the line with us. He's an Oriole fan, but he's also the MLB editor at Sporting News. He, like I, have not seen a whole lot of 4th of July holiday weekends where the Orioles have been in first place, although we do remember the 70s, you and I. But, the Mariners and Nelson Cruz, it becomes an interesting conversation because we'll see him again this weekend. He's back to being Nelson Cruz. He's brought Cano kind of back with him. They were okay for a while. They lost their starting pitching. But the Cruz versus Davis thing is a fascinating argument if you're really going to have a baseball conversation and you're really going to try to get in the head of the old man and say, what the hell were you thinking letting the Latin guy who got along with everybody, who could have been a nice mentor to Machado, what were you thinking letting him get away and then going and giving Davis 2.5 times the amount of money? I mean, I don't... It really is a fascinating play. Now, they might win the World Series this year, and then we can all laugh to the bank. But if you're really making good baseball decisions, letting Nelson Cruz get away and wasting money on the likes of Jimenez and Gallardo, and I don't want to say wasting money on Davis, but spending more than anyone else was willing to spend on Davis, I'm still scratching my head on this one.
Yeah, I think with Cruz, probably the biggest thing working against him was his age. I mean, he's going to be 36 in a couple of days. I think he turns 36 tomorrow.
Or his perceived age, wink, wink.
Right. But, so I think that certainly worked against them and trying to get, I think they thought was, we don't want to invest a lot in a guy who's, this close to 40. And, so far it has not worked out for them because he's been great with the Mariners. I mean, he had a really good year last year. Is one of the best hitters in the league, and again this year is putting up good offensive numbers. He's not going to give you anything defensively, but that's not what you're paying him for. You're paying him to hit a lot of homers and drive in a lot of runs, and he's actually even hitting for a good average with the Mariners, which is not something he's always done. And he is okay on base numbers, not great, but yeah, it's a gamble you take on something like that, and obviously had they re-signed him 2 years ago. Maybe they don't have the money to re-sign Chris Davis, so maybe we're looking at a very different team this year. I don't know, but I certainly understand. I'm generally wary of giving guys, who are 34, 35, giving them, contracts of any length. So I sort of understood it in real time, but yeah, certainly he's played up to the contract so far. There's no doubt about that.
Well, and then there's Mark Trumbo, who Seattle just said, we don't need you, get out of here. And, of all the offseason acquisitions, I mean, I saw it as a potential thing when it happened, and I also saw it for what it was, man. They didn't think they were signing Chris Davis, period. They signed Trumbo to be Davis. They thought Davis was going to price himself out. If someone would have given Davis $161 million real dollars, he would have taken it and he would have been gone. I think they thought he was going to get $200 million out on the market, that someone was going to fall in love with Chris Davis in a power bat, someone more needy, and it never happened. No one fell in love with Chris Davis, and they wound up getting them both. that might be the real trick to the whole offseason, was that Davis's market was depleted. Trumbo's market was non-existent, and they were willing to take a flyer on the next coming of Mark Reynolds, or, name anybody that you think is going to strike out 200 times and has the potential to hit 211. And Trumbo has been the real savior for them, especially in the years we've lamented where the pitching hasn't been all that good.
Well, yeah, I can't disagree with that. I mean, certainly it seems like, at the time, it certainly seemed like they were getting him to be the first baseman. And they expected Davis to be gone. Thought, well, this will at least make up for some of the power we're going to lose. But yeah, I wasn't, real excited about that deal. You mentioned Mark Reynolds. That was kind of the vision I had. And I don't think anybody. I mean, you look at what they gave up for him, which is nothing. Certainly, I don't think anybody saw him having this kind of year. I mean, I think Camden Yards is a great park for him, as it is for a lot of power hitters. But he's hitting well on the road too, and he's just putting up a career year in every way. And that's, again, like you said, that's a big part of why they're doing as well as they are. They're getting a lot of production out of position in the lineup they didn't necessarily expect to get a lot of production out of. And his adventures in right field are always make me kind of close my eyes.
Oh, it's incredible, isn't it? I mean, and then there's the time that they legitimately lose it in the upper deck or in the sun. But I mean, every fly ball, it looks like a little league adventure. It really does. I mean, and he gets to it most of the time. And in general, that's one thing that's going to make this pitching better, is that they've turned double plays. Every ground ball's kind of automatic in this infield, which is, we take it for granted because we've watched pretty good defense, but that's part of Buck being a prick, quite frankly, right? I mean, if you kick the ball around, Buck doesn't want you in his infield because he's seen baseball the last 30 years and knows what happens when that happens, right?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's, I think ideally what they expected to happen was that when they thought they had Dexter Fowler signed, he was going to be the right fielder, Trumbo was going to be the DH, and, everything.
And Pedro Alvarez was going to be not.
And Pedro Alvarez would be with somebody else.
Yes, exactly. Right.
So I think that was the plan, and then Dexter Fowler had other ideas. And
that's going to work out well for that young man, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's having an excellent year until he got hurt, and he's certainly on a great team.
My point is he's going to get a ring or a real chance at a ring. Not that here it wouldn't have happened, but that's pretty obvious that he signed where his heart was, right? I mean, that he didn't want to be here, right?
Yeah, and I think that's fair enough. I mean, I don't begrudge a guy signing where he wants to sign. I do wish that it hadn't worked out where he sort of publicly came out that he was coming to Baltimore and then didn't come up. That's a little bit of a...
Well, I don't know. It depends on which side of Adam Jones's text you're on, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly was kind of a complicated mess, but I do sometimes wonder, what would have happened had he come to Baltimore and been the right fielder, and then you have Trumbo in his more natural position, DH. I think I can't imagine. I can't not think that they would be a little bit better. Not that they haven't been really good anyway, but the defense would be better. Probably they wouldn't have Pedro Alvarez as bad, and you'd be getting production from Fowler. It's kind of an interesting mind experiment to go through, to think that this team could be even better offensively.
Yeah, and Adam Jones wouldn't even have to bat leadoff.
That's one of those weird things that just, it's working. So, I mean, Buck's not going to mess with it.
Yeah, I'm not going to mess with Buck either, because 90% of the manure he throws up against the wall turns into a war hole, right?
He has a magic touch. There's no doubt about it. I mean, like every year, something he does that you're like scratching your head at just turns out great for him. And the Orioles, I'm sure you've noticed, have the most wins in the American League since the beginning of 2012, which is really kind of phenomenal when you think about where they were before that.
And I never really think of them as being all that good. I think they hit the ball a lot, they strike out a lot, and on any given night the pitching, it's more trending towards sucking than looking like, let's say, the Giants or the Dodgers have looked the last couple of years, or even the Cardinals before that, where you're really getting 3 or 4 quality starts a week. They had that at the end of 14, right? When they caught that lightning in a bottle for those 3 months leading up to the run. the pitching was, legendarily sort of Boddicker, Palmer, Flanagan, Martin. Like it looked like that, where you had automatic guys you were looking forward to starting. Most nights, if it's not Tillman, even when it's Gosman, we're sort of holding our nose and holding our breath before they even take the mound, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's been the thing. I mean, they really haven't had good starting pitching this whole run. If you go back to the beginning of 2012, like I mentioned, to have the best record in the league, despite the fact that they really haven't had in the entire time one starting pitcher who would make
Well, here's the interesting thing. How many different starting pitchers have they had since 2012? I mean,
Zach Britton was a starter back then,
Yeah, when you're thinking about the Yankees and the Red Sox, they moved some chairs around, but they weren't bringing in the Mike Wrights and the Tyler Wilsons. I didn't even know who the hell the Yankees had on the farm to start. They never had to do that, right? I mean, and that's how they won 105 games. How's this bunch of ragamuffins in line to win 95 or 98? It really is. I mean, it's a testament to big bats, right? And they always say good pitching beats good hitting. Maybe in October that's true, but when you have 8 guys in the lineup that can hit 25 home runs, some nights you're going to have 17 hits and score 11 runs against bad pitching, right? And that's their formula right now.
Certainly, yeah. And the other thing, you can't discount the fact that throughout this run, they've consistently had a good bullpen.
Sure.
And they've had good defense for the most part throughout this run. Very good defense at times. And so, basically, you look at that starting pitching has been the one element that hasn't been good, but they've been pretty solid in every other aspect of the game that you'd want to be good in. And I think they've also, it's kind of a fluke stat in the sense that this has been an era when the Yankees and Red Sox are down. They're not performing the way they did 10 years ago, where every year they're each winning 95 to 100 games. You haven't had a team like that over the last 4 or 5 seasons, a team that every year in and out is doing great. I mean, the Royals, won the pennant 2 years ago. They only had 89 wins, which is a fairly small amount for a pennant-winning team, and they were below 500 as recently as 2012. So yeah, I think it's kind of a fluky number, and that the timing has been good in terms of there hasn't been a dominant team in the AL, but it's still testament to the fact that Buck has been doing an excellent job with a team that on paper, like you said, doesn't look like a great team in a lot of ways.
We are chatting with Justin McGuire at Sporting News. You can follow his journey on Twitter at JMcGuireSN. Hey, man, go on vacation. We can just hope that when you come back and when Luke comes back, that the Orioles are still in first place and surging ahead into double digits. We'll see how they do out on the West Coast. It's always great having you on, Justin.
All right, thanks. Talk to you later.
You got it. He's down at Sporting News where they have the top 50 players list. You'll definitely want to check that out under the MLB tag and see that Manny Machado is number 4. And you can go make that argument. At least they put him ahead of Arrieta. Kershaw at 3, Bryce Harper at 2, Mike Trout at 1. It's a fun list. Go check it out. You can find me in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day during this holiday stretch. I'm putting together my WNST Rock Week for the week of July 11th. That's going to be cool as well. And, of course, our morning newspaper throughout the holidays hits your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. It is powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Any breaking news that happens first on the WNST Tech Service. That's powered up by our friends at Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.